Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our budget planning session for our libraries. As you all know, we have 3 libraries in town, 1 for each hamlet, and we will be going over the budget for all 3 of those libraries this afternoon. And I will apologize for our comptroller, Abe Zambrano, who's not able to join us this afternoon. He had an emergency that came up. So I will be leading this discussion. And so with that, I want to say right off the bat that our libraries are a treasured resource in our community, and we look forward to being able to partner with them as we have in the past and to give them as much support as we possibly can to help them be sustainable and to continue to provide these excellent services to the community. These services are valued by the community. I know that I hear people say how valuable they are and how much it means to them to have these 3 libraries in our community. So with that said, I'm going to just kick it off with our first library, which is, I will go to KVL.
Wow.
So can everyone see my screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so who would like to give us from the KVL? Is it the executive director or one of the board members would like to walk through this spreadsheet with us?
Sure.
I can't see the spreadsheet, Marianne. Are you sharing your screen?
Oh, okay. Hold on a second. Let me just, thank you, Ellen.
Supervisor Carr, if it would help, we have a few slides to share with the board to carry you through a sort of a high level look at the budget, and then we could stop on the budget submission that we gave to Controller Zambrano and talk about it in more detail, but might be useful to have some context.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. If you'd like to start off with that presentation, Michael, we're happy to allow that.
We know we only have 30 minutes with you. We hope to get through this in 10 minutes and then have plenty of time to talk and field questions.
Okay,
so
great.
Stand by and I will start sharing screen.
Okay.
Just a moment.
Okay.
Host disabled screen sharing. So maybe you might have to enable me to do.
Yep, I'm trying to enable you right now. Hold on a second.
While you're working on that, I just want to introduce myself to anyone I haven't met before it's on the call. My name is Mike Dwyer. I'm the current board president for the trustees at Katona Village Library. And with me today on the call are Mary Kane, our director at KVL, and Ian Shaw, our esteemed treasurer. And we're delighted to be with you. And we thank you very much for taking time to focus on library budget in a very formalized way. We think it's a great thing to do, and we should be institutionalizing this kind of a meeting every year. So we look forward to future ones as well. Should I try sharing screen now, Marianne?
Yes, I have given you host ability.
Great. Okay, good, terrific. So now I am looking at, let's go with this. Stand by, and I'll swing it up to the start. Okay. Are you all looking at a screen which says KVL's 2022 town funding request?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, we'll just dive in right here. And as you know, we've been working with the town board and especially with the task force and Controller Zambrano for about 18 months, and most intensively with the task force since April, to really provide a lot of detailed historic information and forecast and answer the task force questions in detail, in all in support of this budget request. But the basic idea here is a very high level. Is our request is that we move our town annual operational funding to KVL from $639,000 to $775,000. That's an increase of $136,000. And that achieves a great deal for us, and we'll go through that in a moment. KVL's actual contribution from other sources in 2021 sort of subdued because we're not running the book sale, to the same degree we normally do. And while we're on lockdown, we weren't able to collect certain revenue and fines and programming fees. We're doing a ton of Zoom programming, but we're not collecting fees. So in our current budget, that's only 90, but we expect to fully restore to the norm the $160,000 level. That is sort of the number that we've been talking about being able to sustainably support year in and year out through our annual appeal, our book sale, and our other revenue sources. So all told, our expense budget would increase by 200, and that would eliminate a $45,000 deficit we expect to fund out of our reserves in this fiscal year. So about $160,000 worth of incremental spending. Okay, so what this increase does is it brings the town's funding fraction of our overall operating budget back to 83%. That is sort of the stability level that our analysis back 20 years has indicated would enable us to raise the necessary money we can contribute, and when married up with the town support, gets us back to a normal patron service hours through appropriate staffing levels. It makes us operationally stable without dependence on our reserve fund to subsidize operations, which, as Abe will tell you, is, I think the quote was, that's walking into the abyss, to use your reserve monies to subsidize your daily operations. And finally, it also relieves our reserve fund of that subsidy, enabling us to focus on capital projects. So that's the big trifecta for this increase. It really reestablishes balance for KVL. This second slide is just a large sort of an overview. You can refer to it later. It's our basically we call our profile slide. We're 18,000 square foot library. We have collections and programs on multiple floors. We have circulation desks on 2 floors as well. We have multiple public bathrooms and upstairs and downstairs entrances. We mention all this because these physical factors, tie directly into the complexity and staffing required to operate the library. As a statistical matter, our circulation at 107,000 material items, annual visits, 150,000 programs and program attendance. We're right down the middle in terms of on the right side of the slide, you're seeing WLS rankings. We're right on the median for size, and we're in the same neighborhood for a lot of these other physical circulation and visits and program statistics. So just sort of helping you contextualize who we are in the world of libraries. The big question is how does our budget generally break down at a very high level? What this slide is meant to make clear is that the vast majority of our spending is in personnel. We're a human services organization, and delivering service to the community through Katonah Village Library is our largest expense. We're going to talk a lot about our personnel expense in a couple of minutes, but wanted to give you the overall lay of the land in terms of how the money breaks down for Katonah Village Library. This is sort of a slide which sort of quickly compares at a high level funding as it stands today and the services we're providing versus what those services would be, where we're spending money on a fully restored basis. And we call out two general areas here. One is in staffing, and they're both related. We are moving from a current situation of operating 37 hours per week to a restored level of 54.5 hours a week. That's a very significant increase from where we are today. And the related staffing costs needed to achieve that is about $120,000. So again, high level, we're asking the town to increase by $136,000. The vast majority of that spending, $120,000, would be devoted to the staffing necessary to make our library available to the community for an additional 15 hours a week. 17 hours a week, sorry. Mary, at this point, why don't I just kick it off to you so you can sort of give folks a sense for like how what is our staffing model within the library, who's doing what, and where would this money fall within the overall roles and functionalities that we have.
Yep, you can hear me, right?
Yeah, coming through loud.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mary Kane, the director at Katonah Library. So let's just walk you through the staffing here. In red are our 3 full-time staffers, and in blue are all part-time. The majority of the funding increase that we're asking for is going towards our part-time circulation staff, without whom we couldn't open the library. As Michael pointed out, we have a downstairs circ and an upstairs circ desk, both very busy, 2 separate entrances. 36% of our staffing budget goes towards our building leaders, which are the people in red here. These are the professionals who provide social services to the community. This includes programs, personal reference assistance, and the curation of a relevant collection, our books, our audiobooks, our ebooks. Katona Library's professional staff plays a pivotal role in all 3 of these. When COVID struck, Katona Library staff rapidly pivoted. They assessed the community need, and within 2 weeks, the staff was taking patron calls from home on their cell phones, answering reference questions, helping patrons access ebooks, audiobooks, movies. They also moved to a 7-day-a-week online program roster. And within 3 weeks, seniors in the community were meeting with the library's tech coach by phone or online, learning how to use Zoom so they could keep in touch with their grandchildren and their children, which was really important during the quarantine. Within 1 month, staff was delivering books to seniors in their homes throughout Bedford, as well as providing Chromebooks and eventually refurbished laptops to patrons in need. We've heard from many patrons how important the service was during COVID, and still is, because there's, it's still happening. We're still not completely back to where we were. As a customer service industry, we want to know how else can we help. Personal reference assistance plays a huge role in the professional staff's daily interactions. Every day, community members seek out our staff. They need help with job applications, learning how to use a computer, learning how to use a computer mouse, test proctoring, FAFSA forms, passports, registering to vote, finding a place to get the COVID vaccine, filing taxes, filing for unemployment, finding a care facility for their aging parents, finding a cardiologist that takes their health insurance, finding health insurance, taking an online real estate test, finding an at-home nurse for a paraplegic child, registering as a medicinal marijuana patient, learning English as a second language, finding a book on white privilege, finding a book as identifying as transgender, finding a book on recovering from a miscarriage, finding a book on dealing with mental illness, finding a book on how to take their mind off this crazy pandemic. Those are all actual reference questions from the Katona Library. The books and materials at the library are thoughtfully chosen and curated. The goal of the collection is to meet the informational, educational, and recreational needs of our community. It's important to understand what those needs are through ongoing communication with individuals, families, organizations, and the schools. The collection must be constantly monitored through evaluation, reading, and the selection of timely quality materials. And the staff strives to be proactively inclusive in choosing material. And we're always mindful that community members approach us looking for material that is sometimes painful. Recently, a grandmother came into the children's room looking for books about death. She shared that her daughter was dying of cancer and that she wanted to find books to help her grandchildren deal with what was coming. The children's librarian reviewed the ages of the children, chose the material carefully, and recommended specific books, which the grandmother took. This is just one story of so many stories of how the library and the staff play an essential role in the lives of the community. Where else can a person connect with others, find accurate information, and get books and ebooks for free? And just a couple, two more slides down, Michael, is just a final note on staffing. According to annual statistics, the money that Katona Library spends on our staffing, when compared to the other 37 Westchester libraries, shows that we are highly efficient in our spending. Thank you.
Sure, Mary, thanks. And circulation is the key metric by which all libraries are evaluated from an operating expense standpoint. How busy are you, and how much money does it cost you to fulfill all of those demands? So I'm just pivoting back here quickly, and this is partly in response to some ideas that Abe Zambrano raised in our pre-meeting around, ARPA money, American Rescue Plan Act monies, and some of the restrictions around how they might be used. We thought it would be good to take a quick peek at what are the capital projects that we are looking at into the future that might actually have some attachment or quality. Here are all our capital projects, but the top 2 ones on this chart here we're looking at projects that would cost about $200,000 over the next couple of years. There's been quite a bit of deferred maintenance and investment at Katonah Village Library. We have the resources to fund those, but there may be, net of construction grants and everything else. But there's two that are happening like real time. One is the sewer tie-in. That we were just getting sort of an insight into what the cost of that will be. It's going to require the destruction essentially of one of our bathrooms. They have to excavate, go down, tap into the sewer lead, and then go blow out a wall, put a major pump system in, put all that stuff back together and bring us back into service. We don't have a firm estimate of the cost of this, but some of the people that have been looking at the project are telling us it could cost up to $80,000. The reason we're mentioning all this is the biggest problem that we all face in terms of bringing Katonah Village Library $140,000 is reintegrating that money back into the annual recurring town budget framework. That's not an easy lift. We appreciate how difficult that looks from your perspective. A lot of the creative thinking around here thought maybe there was some way, so there are some other monies that could come into play. ARPA was one of them. If ARPA could help us on a capital budget front, like maybe cover a project that we would otherwise use our reserve for, then maybe we could justify a release of those reserves to the operating side of to help subsidize our operations until such time, maybe over the course of the next year or so, the town would be able to fully integrate this increase that we're asking for into the recurring town budget. Because it's a permanent thing that we're going to 140 hopefully this year, and we need to stay at that level if we're going to avoid dramatic reductions in service. That was the reason for this slide. Here's the operating budget we passed on to Abe. I'll come right back to that. Our general request is we're hoping that you can share your plans for the budget and our funding for KVL quickly so we can begin to adjust service levels. We're happy to cover the cost to get us between here and January 1st, but we have to understand what the financial framework and operating support will be in 2022 in order to make those investments today. Again, clarify what the plan is for integrating any increases into the town budget, so we know that it's not a one-shot deal. And finally, a thought that came up through all of this, through the task force and all the work that we have done, is that the libraries in town are complex. They're all different. It takes a little bit of knowledge to kind of really dig into what's going on with our libraries. It's a very important budget line from your perspective. And we thought, maybe give some consideration to independent library commission, a group like the Wetlands Commission or the zoning people that Don Cullis worked for years on, for example, where you could actually store knowledge. The town board changes from time to time, and you're focused on other things most of your year. This could be a commission that would really, dig in and understand what libraries are all about, how they contribute, and they might be able to be able to advise the board on questions of what's happening long-term planning-wise, what it costs to keep them appropriately funded sustainably, so that we can avoid, any sudden changes in funding of the sort we're trying to kind of come back from right now. I mean, that was the extent of our comments. I'll flash the budget up here now, and please.
Michael, let me share the budget because I think it's more readable from the Excel spreadsheet that I have. It's exactly the same information.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So this is what Michael was sharing.
Oh, so I should stop sharing, right? Let me do that.
Yes, you should stop sharing, Michael.
Got it.
Okay, and if you stop sharing, I will start sharing.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Marianne?
I'm going to share the budget, that spreadsheet that Michael was trying to share because it was a very small font. Okay. For some reason I'm not getting back my host. Oh, here we are. Did you see here? Okay. Oops. One quick second.
Let me use this opportunity while we're quiet to ask a question.
Yeah,
The other libraries have shared with us what the cost of their benefits are. I noticed that you just give us one line, which is that of staff costing. Can you please share with us what your charges or your estimated charges or benefits will be for next year? Mary Ann, I was just using some of the time.
sure. Yeah, and all libraries are a little bit different in this regard. I should have probably mentioned, I'm sharing, what I'm going to, Don, is a sort of a compendium that we've put together of all the work that we've done for the task force and down through over the last 18 months or so. We actually, reason I mention it is we left a copy of it at Town Hall for all of the town board members. It's sort of a reference tool. So please feel free, if there's anything that didn't get answered here today, take a look at that because there's a lot of information in there. Now, to your question, let me just see if I can get a quick reference on this, Mary. You might, oh, sorry. Hey, wait, is that Mary Ann? Okay, great. Stand by while I look this up, Don.
Okay, so I'm sharing what Michael had on his screen, but was in smaller print. That was a good question, Don. Thank you so much.
So here's the answer. It's our projected costs for Social Security, workers' comp, disability. Let's see, you want retirement costs, Don? $43,000.
43, thank you.
Yeah, that's in the task force schedules that we sent over in April and June.
I don't think it's winded my way yet.
Okay. Okay, fair enough.
So Michael and Mary, thank you so much for that presentation. I think some of what was in your presentation is line items in this spreadsheet here. But if you just want to walk us through some of the individual
Sure.
line items, that would be helpful.
Sure. Okay. So, you know, obviously in the top line, the most important line for us is the town of Bedford contribution to our operating budget. That's, you know, sort of peaked in 2010 at 636, was cut by 10%, has sort of climbed its way back to 636 in 2020 and 639 in the current year. So that we sort of see the trajectory of that, and you can see the increase to 70 to 75 that we've requested. Interesting, I'm going to focus mostly on 2021 to 2022. 2021 is a pandemic impacted year. We try to distinguish that up here at the top. It's in that year that we had less sort of internal revenue. We're projecting an annual appeal of 75,000 because that's kind of around our historic average. And, you know, we haven't been able to run our fall book sale in the same way, and we haven't had desk collections and other things at the normal rates, but all of that should recover such that in 2022, the combination of town resources, 70-75, and the predictable core revenue that we expect to be able to generate would, if you can scroll down just a smidge here, Miriam, will bring us to a total revenue of 936. At that level of revenue, we can increase the hours that we're open to the community by I think it's 17 hours or something a week, and do the necessary staffing behind that. As Mary Keene pointed out, you can scroll down a little bit more into the expenses for the benefit of the discussion. Thank you. As Mary Keene pointed out, all of the increases in staffing are going to run to our part-time staff. They're not going to the professional librarians. We need those part-timers to actually man the circulation desk and do the other critical functions that need to be done as long as the library is open. And that's the sort of, you get a lot of leverage from your librarians because you're paying them a full-time salary and they're there to service and do reference work whenever the library is open. But you can't open the library for more than 37 hours without adding directly to your part-time staff. So I want to make that clear. That's the biggest change here. We're going to do some more acquisition of library materials, bringing those back to historic norms. Our building and office and insurance is a very stable number, which is only increasing in this budget forecast for the amount of annual service that we'll need to do for the sewer, which we estimate around $4,000 as a charge, a tolling fee for being on the town's new sewer system. That's an estimate, but we think it's realistic. Our WLS contracts are at high flux. We've backed out of their technology group, but we've done some investing, and we believe that while if we had stayed, that number would have grown well past $56,000, $57,000 this year, because we're out and we're separately contracting for our technology support and only using WLS for their library system, that we're going to contain our cost to 50, which is a huge win in our estimate. Administrative expenses, they're reverting to the norm, the pre-COVID norm. Fundraising expense, that's kept way down from the early years of 2018, 2019, because we don't expect to have to run the very expensive party style fundraising that really was kind of a failure in terms of supporting our core operations anyway. And then finally, on the grant side, we always put a little bit of grant revenue in there to support programs. So that's a quick rundown of what we're doing. You know, at the bottom, you'll see we're bringing in town support at 83%. That's the key metric that we need to staff to. And the hours of service are also listed there. So let me stop and pause there and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, I wanted to just point out, Don, to your question, right? So if you look at the total benefits, right, between health and retirement, you know, Social Security, you're talking about, you know, almost $150,000 across the staff, right? So in the 22 budget, and that's not in here. It's in the materials that Mike said left at the town, which is the supplemental materials. But, you know, our focus has been to grow incrementally and carefully. And in order to do that, that's why we're pushing to the part-time staff, because that doesn't increase the benefits line substantially in that purpose, right? We don't have to give them health benefits. We can the cost for the retirement fund contribution by the library stays down. So really what we're trying to do is use the money as efficiently as possible that we're getting from the town in order to make sure that the library can provide the service on the consistent, cost-effective basis that we have been over the last few years.
Thank you.
Thank
What
you.
you say benefits total 150,000 this year for projected for next year?
Projected at full funding levels for 22 would be around 150,000, yes. But
Thanks.
that's health, retirement, and Social Security, you know, Social Security and others.
Good.
And how many people would that be for?
That's 11.6 full-time employees.
No, Michael, three full-time employees.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Only the full-time employees receive the benefit package.
Okay.
Receive health benefits, right?
Well,
So there would be retirement contribution made on behalf of the part-timers who elect to participate in the New York State retirement program, because we have to offer that to all of the staff that work in the library, regardless of the amount of hours that they work.
So that would be for health insurance, retirement,
Social Security.
and
That's
Social
right.
Security.
That's
Okay.
right.
So roughly $150,000 for 3 persons. Okay.
Well, no.
Whoa.
It's 3 people will get the health benefits. So that would be at 71,000, right? And then there's incremental. So it goes up from 36.5 to 43 for the retirement contribution based on the increase in hours across the part-time. And then there would be an increase of $10,000 in Social Security benefits that would have to be paid by the library based on the increase in hours.
So first, I wanted to thank you for the presentation. I did want to highlight, since Michael, you raised the issue of 2020 and 21 being pandemic impacted. Unfortunately, the town also has been pandemic impacted and on a much greater scale. So unfortunately this year, and I'm not saying this applies only to libraries, this applies to everything we're doing across the board, that we have been pandemic impacted as well. So that's something we've had to take into consideration in everything we're doing, right down to, you know, arguing over whether we can replace a damaged desk. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I know it's come up repeatedly about having to be closed over the weekend. And, you know, I don't want to get into too much nitty gritty, but, you know, I appreciate that you're saying that you're trying to make the town funds go as far as possible. But have you considered, since you open every day at 10 and 10 in the morning is probably less busy than a weekend would be, you know, opening at say 11 o'clock a couple days a week and then closing at 4 one day a week, so you can have those limited weekend hours? Because, you know, some of this may be creative problem solving, which is what we've been doing a lot of as a board now that we've had such a huge revenue loss.
Mary, do you want to tackle
Sure.
what we're doing during those
Yeah.
hours of the week?
We did ask a lot of patrons what we should be doing. This was a difficult decision to try to figure out what day we had to close on. The seniors, most of our programming for seniors and children are during the day. And a lot of teenagers are also coming here at the end of the school day. And Saturdays is not good for programming. I also have a staff that was hired exclusively for weekdays. They were not hired for weekends. So I will have to find more staff because we were on a COVID staff. So we never did hire for the weekends. So that would have to change completely as well. So ultimately the decision was made so as not to impact seniors and children to close on Saturdays. And I know it's inconvenient for everyone. And Sundays also, I have to pay more to people when they come in on Sundays. So Sundays were off the table too.
Okay, because I mean, I don't run a library, obviously. I'm just thinking that the 1 hour on, you know, on the end of a couple of days probably wouldn't make that much of an impact on the seniors and the children and the teens.
But for the teens, they're all here. All of our programming is 3 o'clock on for the teens. And they go until 6 o'clock, some of them, at the outside right now.
Which drives the other programming back into the day earlier.
10 a.m. senior programs. So that's the tricky part.
The problem is, it's just hard. There's we're doing everything we can within reason to try to shuffle money around and save money. We're not want to ask you for $1 more than we absolutely need to operate sustainably.
To Bobby's point, couldn't those morning programs be shifted to afternoon on those selected days?
There are exercise programs for seniors that are set up at a time that was convenient for them. And it's about 40 to 80 seniors that are impacted by that.
But to answer my question, couldn't they be shifted to afternoon or?
No, the answer would be no. They have asked for morning programming.
I understand they've asked for, okay, I'll leave it.
We're either impacting the seniors and the children or we're always going to be impacting someone if we're not fully open and functional.
That's
We
true.
had to make a choice.
The one important element I've learned about the library is that there's a tremendous amount of sunk costs here in terms of this professional staff and everything that's going around it. The value is exponential for increasing the hours of the library. That is for the last, $10,000, you get there's a big payoff because you're leveraging against all of these already invested in costs. to, that's what sort of makes it. And then the community, they're passionate to get access to this stuff outside the normal operating hours, Saturdays, nights, when they come home from work. That's the only time of day people really have to come in and to bring their reference questions. So it's just a terrible, it's terribly stressful to think about where there's no victim-free curtailment of service. It's all impactful.
Our mornings are very busy with strollers and moms and nannies. That's the first people through our door in the mornings.
I have one other question. There's a rumor that you received $130,000 or some funding from the federal government in COVID assistance. Is that true? And
Of
it's
course.
not reflected in the budgets that you presented.
So
All three of the libraries received that.
Yeah. What happened is 2020, crazy year. We slashed our budget because in the face of COVID and not even being able to be open to the public, we dramatically curtailed our cost structure. On the other hand, our fundraising was very strong, and we had support from the federal government in the way of a PPP loan that was converted to a grant. So the basic story around 2020, how this all played out, was the broader realities in the course of, we had some windfall experience in 2020, which basically enabled KBL to recover some of the capital that's been expended over 2018-19, when we were running these massive operating deficits. We recovered a bunch of these resources through both fundraising and through the PPP loan. So we're kind of back to neutral. We've covered a lot of damage, but all of that doesn't solve the problem that we face, which is, what are the recurring sources of revenue, reliable public funding that we can rely on in order to return to full service in 2022? Those amounts are sunk, they're absorbed by the organization at this stage.
So you did receive 130 or what?
Yeah, we got one. Mary has to break down. It's I think 107 from the feds, and then another 20,000 in equipment financing that are basically the Business First grant that we use to fund a ton of the computers that are driving down the cost of our IT operations.
The Business First grant was for PPE equipment.
Oh, sorry, Mary. What was?
Yeah.
Okay, we got 10,000 for that, or what was 20?
20 something for the PPE,
Right.
and
Well,
we're
I
still
have more
using it.
there.
We had to put in MERV air filters. We've been using it to pay for masks and for sneeze guards, and so that's been being utilized.
And 45,000 of that PPP is going to be absorbed this year too, as we go through the budget. We're providing services we can't support today. We're running a deficit of $45,000 just on the very deeply curtailed services that we're offering. So when you think about the increases that we're asking for, the first 45 fills a negative hole that we're carrying into this budget cycle, through this budget cycle, and can't carry beyond it.
Thank you, Michael. And certainly the weekend hours are certainly something that we'd like to see happen for Katona Village Library. The other two libraries are open on the weekends, and we know that that service is needed. The other part is, so if, say hypothetically, this was doable and possible, the 130 or $40,000 that you're asking for, you're saying a one-time bump would not be sufficient?
No, because these are recurring costs. It's very important that we find a way to integrate that 140,000 into the town budget framework, the budget line. That's a big step up. We appreciate and we've discussed this with Abe and with others. We're trying to figure out how to fill that. Because one and done won't do it. It'll just lead to a crisis the following year, where we have to fire everyone we hired, and then we're back where we started. It's it's a challenge, and we're here to work with you to figure out a way to do it. We think some of the ARPA money that can be spent on sewer projects might be able to. Who knows? Maybe you'll be able to help us with our sewer project, and we can bring some of those monies into operations that we would otherwise spend out of capital.
Well, I can tell you that the sewer project funds, the sewer project for the library is something that the town had already committed to paying for. because of where your system is located. So that's not something that we had already I had already discussed this with with our town DPW, with the board that came before this board, that would be included. Your sewer expenses would be included. The board would incur those expenses.
You're absolutely right, Supervisor Carr. And I think at the time they thought it was going to be a $14,000 expense or $10,000 tie-in. When the people got on site here with their plumbers and people around town, they looked at the project. They pretty much freaked out and said, "Holy cow, this is way out. We never promised you we would do this." And now that we're looking at $80,000 lift, it actually kind of ties straight into the sewer, which is the one thing I think the ARPA funds are unquestionably applicable to. So we thought this might be a path. We're trying to find money to alleviate the idea that you'll have to that you would need to fully integrate 140 into your recurring town budget framework in one single cycle. Maybe we can blend this over too. There's other projects we're doing an ADA compliant bathroom to our waste system too. We don't know what exactly. Abe is in the process of learning what exactly they could do. And we are hoping and crossing our fingers that, together we could find a way to build a bridge. Let's get us back up and running at full capacity in the way that the community is hopeful that we can. And then we can, if it's not fully integrated entirely this year, maybe we pick up the slack next year.
Right.
Now you've done an enormous thing by correcting a library funding scheme that has really kind of wandered from where it should be.
Right.
I mean, you
And
guys,
before I see Ellen has her hand up, but before I give her that, we have discussed, I have been in discussions with DPW that, the funds that we originally talked about in terms of the sewer infrastructure that needed to be incurred, expenses that we needed to incur that were directly related to KVL. We've talked about that expense certainly not being what it is. It's possibly way more than what we originally talked about more than 2 years ago. So we understand that, and the prices of labor and material has definitely gone up. So we do understand that, that price that we set is probably not the most accurate projected expense of that particular project.
sure.
So, Ellen?
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. And I'm really looking forward to, I really think that you're right, that we aren't going to be able to cover the whole amount in next year's budget, but your proposal that we can cover some of the capital expenses, possibly with ARPA money, is a really great way to bridge where we can give, a certain amount, we can expect this year, next year, and as ARPA, actually there'll be more ARPA money next year. So, we can do it 2 years where we're making up the difference in what's sustainable funding. And then by year 3, hopefully we can have the full amount in the budget going forward. And I think that's a great way to do it. I like that you brought up that the library is a designated shelter. If there are things that the town can do to make sure that works out, that's a great service to the town. The sewer project, I think there was things we didn't anticipate 2 years ago that need to go into that, and we should look at how we can cover that with ARPA money, because you're right, that is right in line with what that money can be used for. And I think we're still researching the use of that money for government services and how we may be able to fund some of these other things, the HVAC or things like that would fit right in there. So I think we'll have to look at, we don't have, without raising taxes a great deal, there's not a lot of room in this year's budget. The town also took a cut, and we haven't had parking revenues and court fees and a lot of things. So this is the taxpayers who are making this decision, and we have to look at how much money is available. But I'm hoping that with ARPA money we can make the bridge so that by year 3 we're there.
Right,
And we'll be there because you
The
have
money is coming
reserved
2 years in a row, not ARPA money. Ellen, is coming 2 years, not.
2 years,
not a-
but by year
it's
3 in the
ARPA
budget,
money coming.
we should be able to catch up. We should have,
Right.
we should have our parking fees back again. We should have our court fees back again. Our budget should have recovered, you know, by year 3 so that we can carry 2 years with ARPA money in the 3rd year. We should be able to make it. And I think, you know, if you're, you know, then you're willing to put in your reserves to make up the difference. So you're fully functional from the get-go.
That's the key, Alan. Like
Yeah.
we want to like come back strong here, get established. And how we do it in the background, that's a conversation between KBL and Abe and you guys. That's fine. As long as we have a plan, like it's really important so that like we memorialize what we're doing so that, you know, we know that we're building out a cost structure that will ultimately be sustained, a reasonable, you know, probability of being sustained. That's the key. Yes, thank you.
No.
And your reserves, that's usually for capital projects. Is that how you consider that money?
100%. Yeah. Capital.
And you've been having to draw upon those for many years. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes. And Abe would cringe, you know, if he'd never let the town do that, which is why we're not asking you to release reserve to solve our problem.
Mhm. And in your budget, you have about, I think you have that you would like to see 83% funding by the town, and the other 17% is grants and revenues and fundraising combined.
It's
That's
annual
correct.
appeal, the book sale, the fines and revenues that we generate through program and internal to the library. We have such long history with that which is a huge amount. It's way more than any other library in Westchester does. It puts us really in the outliers on the spectrum of what library, you know, granted libraries are very different, some are municipal and the rest of it, but raising 17-18% of the revenue necessary to operate the library each year is no small feat. So yes, yeah, it would be a combination. Other fundraising could be done to support our reserve, which is deeply underfunded and needs to be restored. So that we, you know, those event fundraising style, that's something that is, you know, it's kind of episodic and problematic because you think you're going to raise 50, but you get 30. That's no way to run the operational side of the business. It's fine on the reserve side because if you don't get it this year, you'll get it with next year's event. Reserves can be restored over long periods of time. Operations have to be balanced in every year, which is why you need secure public funding and other reliable sources. So yes, that's the operating model for true stability with the library.
Okay, because that was something I wanted to ask about. I just wanted to distinguish that, yes, there is going to be fundraising going on through the appeal and the book sale. It was just event fundraising that was not going to be focused on, because I just wanted to clarify that, because I think, I mean, everybody around the, you know, virtual table here knows the difference between an association library and a municipal library, but I think some of the public who will be watching may not know the difference, in that the municipal libraries are fully funded by the town, but then they also have to be accountable to the town for what they're spending, but they're not responsible for fundraising. On the other hand, what we have are association libraries, and I think actually fewer libraries in Westchester are, but then they are not fully funded by the town. But the benefit of that is that you do have your own autonomy and independence in making a lot of decisions, which I think is great. But then you also have to make up for some of that funding, and it is through fundraising. But I just wanted to be clear that you are doing your part on the fundraising, which you do have factored in. It's just the events, which I understand can be costly. So I just wanted to clear that up. But I agree wholeheartedly with Ellen that we do need to get you onto sustainable funding, which I agree is a long-term plan. I think this is long overdue, and I want to see this across the board for all the libraries. There's no question.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Event fundraising appropriate for capital, not appropriate for operations. Annual appeal, very appropriate for operations. We know what we can generate in that front. And the elimination of the capital fundraising, well, it should help our annual appeal. We hope to grow that over time, and we'll be in communication with you on how that process goes. So, you know, we might think we can only do 160. Well, we might be able to do 165. We'll have to see how the averages grow. We're tinkering with the model, but we're doing it in a sustainable way thanks to your support.
Okay, and I agree also. Thank you for giving us the outline of the possible ARPA project, because we're waiting to hear back from the auditors. And I think that is the perfect way to subsidize some of what we need to do to kind of bridge where we have a shortfall right now and we'd love to be able to put it all into the budget. But since we can't build it into the budget right now, I think that will be the bridge that gets us over the next 2 years. And hopefully we'll be making the revenues and we can inject some of that not only into the libraries, but other places in the budget. So I agree. And I'm hoping that those things get approved, but they look like they fit the bill.
I'm sure we'll have some more
That's what we were saying
questions
is
for
that the
Katrina.
budget, those projects, those infrastructure projects were earmarked for ARPA monies. So that's exactly the same thing we just said, is that the infrastructure projects that we were looking at in terms of what Katona Village Library was going to need was going to be earmarked for some of the ARPA money. So that's no different than what our thinking was initially.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have more questions for you, but I think we'd love to hear from the other libraries.
Sure.
Similar
Right.
information.
Stephanie, did you came on, you've been on the task force. Did you have any final comments?
No, I think we've settled, I think, in a good place. It was a pleasure to work with the task force, where we did discuss a lot of this, including ways that we might be able to take advantage of that ARPA money. And I love the idea of not just making you sustainable, but like really thriving organizations, right? You know, where we're not having to have these conversations, but I do recognize that it is something that we're going to have to do in partnership over time.
Sure. Thank you. Really appreciate the partnership.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Mary. Very
Thank
thorough
you.
presentation. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have is Bedford Hills. Mary.
Hello, everybody.
Let me share my screen so you can walk through it.
Well, that's happening. I just wanted to let everyone know that on the Zoom with us today is Susan Kane, our treasurer, Natalie Stroll, our secretary, and Heidi Shilstone, vice president of the board.
Welcome.
Welcome, yes, welcome.
And before we jump into the numbers, I thought it might be helpful just to dial back a little bit and let you know what was happening with the Bedford Hills Free Library during the COVID period. Last time we came before the town, it was right before the lockdown. And I feel that, we've done quite well despite all of the challenges. And while everybody is feeling the pain, I think that many of the families in our service area have been particularly hard hit. And we worked very hard to respond to the needs here, including opening as soon as we could. So we brought the staff back in the June of 2020 and established the contactless pickup by July, and then opened our doors in September of 2020. Reduced hours, but at least allowing people the opportunity to come in and use a computer or send a fax or something like that. And throughout the whole process, we've maintained the same policies about safety and social distancing, wearing masks, etc. And now we are open every day. We're not open in the evenings yet, but we intend to do that next month. So some of the positive things that came out of that was we moved from story times that were in person to setting up a video YouTube video channel, and our children's librarian sent out story time videos every week along with early literacy notes. And this was very important for keeping the connection with families and making sure that a familiar face was before the children. We also had some success with Zooming for adult programs. For example, our shorts program attracted people from a wider geographic area and people who enjoyed the program in the comfort of their home. And we also just wanted to highlight, appreciated that during this period, the help that we received from the town and Recreation and Parks Department in particular. We had the sewer construction going on this summer outside of our building. And so it was really impossible for us to offer any of our usual workshops for the summer reading program in our backyard. And so we were able to use the shelter at the Memorial Park, and that really helped us. And we also were pleased to open up the first story walk installation, which will be a permanent program at the park. So just wanted to throw that in and thank the town for supporting the library in those areas. So for the budget, we are actually attempting in the next year, like everybody else, to get back on track. As a result of COVID, we certainly had a reduction in income across the board, especially in gifts from small businesses. We did not do our annual gala. And we rely on revenue from parking spot rentals, and that, of course, was reduced. We did get in 2020 a PPP, so you see that bump up in the restricted revenue. That was $85,000. And so during COVID, I'm happy to say that we were able to keep everybody who was on the regular staff on the payroll. So when we had to cut our hours, it was reducing the number of hours that part-time people were paid, and in some cases eliminating part-time staff who were working circulation in the evenings and on Saturdays. So going forward in next year, we want to go back into the usual strategies for bringing in income, but the goals are going to be modified. We do have in this current fiscal year our annual appeal. So we expect to actually by the end of this year be in balance. Next year, we need to raise more money because the expenses are being increased. The primary area of increase is in personnel. And as we heard from Katona, that comes with it. It's the salaries, it's the health benefits, retirement that we provide to everybody, regardless if they're full-time or part-time. Other expenses are, slight increase in the library materials and facilities costs, but it's a very modest budget for 2022. And so the help that we're requesting, it's an increase, a slight increase from last year, is really to help us to mitigate the reduced income that we expect in the next year. And in the following year, 2023, we plan to be back on track. One thing that I wanted to point out, actually, I'm going to stop and see, are there any more questions or any questions about the budget? And then I just want to talk a little bit about our community and the demographics and what our needs are going beyond the operating budget.
Thank you, Mary. Have you had to pull from your reserves to make up this year and the past few years?
No, we have not.
Okay, so you've managed that through fundraising, I guess you've been able to make up. Okay.
And I think I can safely say that we're pretty lean and mean with the budget, and so for a number of years now, almost 8 years, we've had, a model where we really look at, the number of hours that people are putting in. And we have right now 3 full-time staff people in the budget, and everybody else is part-time. And some people are very part-time, like maybe, 10 hours a month. So.
And can you talk about the benefits that the full-time people get?
Yes, full health insurance benefits. And actually, as a result of the cutback that we received from the town a number of years ago, staff volunteered that if they were eligible for Medicare, that they go on Medicare and just simply get reimbursed for that expense. And so we have done that and are continuing to do that. And I think that saved some money in that line item. Of course, it includes vacation, paid time off, and holidays, as well as retirement. And we work through a SEP program. And so we have some, flexibility in terms of how we manage that retirement account. We can, every year, the board votes on what percentage of the salary would be applied to retirement. So if we're having a difficult year, they have the option of either giving us zero or a reduced amount.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. So you,
So your benefits, according to another sheet I have, your benefits for 2022 are an estimated $14,000. Is that correct?
I'm wondering what you're referring to.
It's something called the Bedford Free Library 2022 proposed budget.
Yeah, it's Bedford
That's
Free
Bedford
Library, not
Free.
Bedford Hill.
Sorry, Bedford Hills I'm talking about.
Yeah, I will have to look up that number. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
but it's somewhere in that area anyway.
It may be a little higher than that
Okay.
in considering the retirement.
Okay.
so Mary, this would be a good time for you to share with us the demographics. of
Okay.
the community in which you serve.
Yes, I know that we brought this up every time that we do a work session with the town, but I think it's so important, to reiterate that Bedford Hills is a very, very different demographic from Katona and Bedford Village. 10% of the people who live in Bedford Hills are below the poverty line. The average income in Bedford Hills is almost $57,000 a year, compared to $217,000 in the village and $168,000, I'm rounding out the numbers, in Katona. And we also look at other indicators of underserved economically, looking at how many people are enrolled in subsidized lunch programs in the schools, and it's 3 times the level in Bedford Hills as the other communities. At the same time, we're seeing the enrollment in the schools go up. So it's a much higher rate than the other communities. And there's some, shifting around in terms of like the ESOL program, people are being bused, and actually people who live in other communities within the Bedford Central School District are being bused to other communities to kind of balance things out. But Bedford Hills Elementary School is quite robust in terms of the enrollment, as far as I understand. And then when we look at the ethnic diversity too, especially Hispanic and Latinx population, it's over 30%. And this is reflected in the schools as well. Principal Gold tells me that there may be as many as 50% that are from, immigrant families, but there are 30% that are in the ESOL program. So these are all indications, in our view, that the community is very distinctive from the other hamlets. The needs may be greater, and the potential for getting support, like we can't necessarily go to the patrons and have the financial support that may be enjoyed by, a different demographic. So I want to point that out. It's very important. And the other connection that we would like to make is that when we look at the statistics, the program perform, how many programs can we produce? How many people come to our programs? How many people walk through our doors and take advantage of our computers and things like that. The fact that we are a smaller facility has a direct impact on those statistics. So, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Every year, the board reviews our New York State report, and we tie back all the statistics to that one variable, that our facility is small and inadequate. And just to give you a scale for those who may not know, we're half the size of Bedford Village, and the second smallest in the county. So what we would like to see, if we are able to take advantage of special funding through ARPA, is, you know, a look at how can we improve our facility going forward so that we have the infrastructure to support the library's program so that we can be more successful in our program and service delivery. And then, of course, you know, directly impacting the community of Bedford Hills. So we know that we have an opportunity, that the sewer is now here, because in the past, you know, you might wonder, why haven't we taken this on before? And it's because our backyard has a septic tank and the rest of the property has the septic field. And so we never had any ability to really build out. Now we have that opportunity, and that's coming at the same time that we have this influx of funding that is intended to serve those communities who have been hard hit by COVID and who are, you know, in a position of really having inequity in terms of the services that they're receiving. And I think the outcome for investing in that, you know, can only result in lifting up the entire town of Bedford. So the board would actually like me to request that we have a follow-up to this discussion and look more closely at the ways that we might tap into that infrastructure money as well, so that we can move along our facilities expansion project.
Thank you, Mary. I know that the population and demographics is quite different than, say, the other two libraries, and certainly just the size does not mean that the services are not as robust, and you serve and you provide as many programs as some of the other, one of the other two libraries. And I think that the one thing that I think is definitely needs to be looked at is possibly using some of the ARPA funds to consider an expansion for Bedford Hills Library, because like you said, the need is there and the need continues to grow. And so while we're looking at ARPA funds for one library, I'd certainly like to look at it for the other two as well, in terms of, you know, if there is an opportunity for us to provide some support to expansion.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you for keeping the library open on the weekend. Really appreciate that.
Yes, and everything you did during COVID as well. Mary, so basically what you're saying is that if you had a community room and a full-size bathroom and like a renovated building, like a little more space, your numbers of service would probably go up.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and I didn't really get into detail about it, but, you know, obviously we don't have a space for adults to meet. We have one single bathroom that's located in the children's room, so adults go in there, which is just not good. For those of you who've been to the library, you know that we have steep stairs going up to the second level, you know, and so if anybody has mobility issues, it's completely inaccessible. We have the computer rooms and the fiction room. And, you know, so we're limited in terms of that. And of course we can't do public events.
Well, it's amazing how much you do in that little space and on a shoestring most of the time. So is there anything else? I mean, we would all love to talk to you more about using ARPA money and looking at how you can improve the facility. Are there other things that are kind of coming up that are infrastructure related that you need, or that's the main thing we should be looking at?
I think, when we would like to come before you and get more detail about it, but I think the initial work in this area is to conduct a feasibility study so that we're very concrete about the costs and the impact in the community, and making sure that we have buy-in and the research to support the private funding that we know that we would need to help make this happen.
Okay. And the amount that you're asking, the increase would be about 77% of your operating costs, and you make up the rest in fundraising and revenues and grants?
Yeah. We do the annual appeal. We do one gala event, which for us is, has made money, but it's also been a community building initiative. Local business support, which in the past has primarily funded our summer reading program, and then private grant money from foundations and individuals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Don or Stephanie, any questions, comments? None from Don, and he's shaking his head. Stephanie? Bobby, you have anything?
Thank you. I mean, obviously, we especially appreciate, the need amongst the underrepresented and underserved in the area. And certainly, that should be centered. And as we have ARPA discussions, there are specific monies that can be used for just those populations as well. So I think, while we certainly want to focus on infrastructure, because that makes a lot of sense, I think it's also fair to consider if there's any human pieces that we want to consider, because that makes sense as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Mary, for your patience.
Thank you.
Mary.
Okay, next we have Bedford Free Library up. So let me pull up information for Bedford Free.
Thank you, Marianne. Ray Infarnato here. I was wondering if you could do a screen share to start, because I do have a little bit of a background story to tell as we talk to Ellen and Abe and Bobby. We wanted to continue our story from where we left off about 18 months ago. So before we get into the financials proper, we do have just a few pages of things to.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
And Raymond, you are the person who's sharing?
Yes, let me just get my. There I am. Hi, everyone. I have a list of people to say thanks to the board, and I realize we have so many others, but thank you to the Town of Bedford board and the other libraries for participating in all this. And hello to everyone I don't know who's joined in. I'm the current president of the Board of Trustees, the proud president at Bedford Free Library.
We know that you're very active, Raymond.
Wow.
You have share abilities.
That's very nice of you. Let's see. Are we ready to screen share?
Yes, you are.
I have here. Let me know that those are coming up and that you can see them okay? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Thank you. I will go through this kind of crisply because I know where we are in your overall schedule, but also thank and welcome Ann Clunan, our beloved library director who's here, and also Ted Eigel, our crack treasurer, are here in the room with me so we can take questions intermediate or at the end, certainly. But we prepared something to kind of continue the story as we met with Ellen and Bobby and Abe last month. One of the themes that came out of there was to continue our story from where we left off in February of 2020. And it was only 18 months ago. This little picture shows what happened, shortly thereafter in March when the pandemic was upon us. But we do have a couple of photos throughout that we share with you to give a flavor for who we are and what we do at Bedford Free Library. So again, thanks everyone for joining in. And let's take us through a little bit of a chronology from that time to now. We've highlighted a few things on this chronology, this timeline, that give you a flavor for, let us say, the art and the science of running the library. And for most in attendance, you know many of those things, but it might be worth highlighting for those who don't, that when the library closed mid-March, we very quickly, as others have referenced, moved into Zoom. And we started, not wanting to use the word pivot too much, we started moving things to Zoom, developing things like grab and go kits, doing contact-free pickups, and just kind of trying to keep the library operations going and running within the protocols, within the guidelines that we saw. And Anne and her team were able to do that. And it was a great effort. We were down relatively short time and started ramping back up again. And let me just say that that's one of the hallmarks of our library. Folks like working there. We'll talk a little bit about the makeup of our flexibly staffed team in a second, but they were able to get out into the community, contact vulnerable patrons who weren't able to get to the library, and do things like, homebound services, book deliveries, and then, as I mentioned, grab and go kits for children, and contact-free pickup. People would drive up and pick up their library materials. It was really great. If you look at some of these highlighted areas, moving through the quarters, we restored our regular library hours, third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter in 2020. That was a good thing for us because, as was commented by the other libraries, with our patrons, they're used to having us open certain hours, and that's a good thing. And we were able to get that restored within the year, and that was great. We were open during the holidays, despite watching the spikes in the virus. And now we're back to open pretty much full time, 44 hours a week with no appointment required. So just to give you kind of a sense for where we were only 18 months ago. I mean, we met with the town board in February, and then the COVID virus was upon us in March. The themes and our priorities, this kind of came to us in our meeting with Ellen, Abe, and Bobby, who said, just continue your story. Let us know how it's going, where you've come in these 18 months, and we'll talk about the financials in more detail. But we have a lot of learnings and positive outcomes actually going through the pandemic. We were able to deliver more and more programs virtually through Zoom. What you see here in this photo are our children's librarian and our children's programming manager, Kelly and Krista, and they've taken the program out of the building so they could deliver it outdoors. So we have our weekly story times on the Village Green with very high levels of participation. That's a lot of fun. That's a really good thing. And that's something that continues to this day. At a time when I would say the employee engagement, I work in business, I work in training and development. I see a lot of clients and customers that their employee engagement is relatively down, in fact, way down in many instances. But at the Bedford Free Library, our employees wanted to get back to work as soon as possible. It is kind of a very team-spirited group that kind of sets us apart, makes it a lot of fun to be there and work there. And that continues through this day. It was true before the pandemic, and it's true to this day as we kind of evolve out of the pandemic. Some of our priorities at the right side of the page, we're going to touch upon those in more detail with some quantification in about 2 pages. But we have put our list together of some things on our needs list, such as an HVAC upgrade to better address ventilation and air purification. We also always look at increasing our programming, doing better programming, more far-reaching programming, and seeing kind of what meets the needs of most of our patrons and what's in demand by others. And we try and develop a delicate balance between kind of veteran patrons and our new patrons coming into the system. And then we're going to talk about some of our general building maintenance development needs there, because many of you know the Bedford Free Library is a historic building. Next page, we talk about who we have here at in our staff at the library. It's a wonderful group, a relatively small group. You can see up at the upper left corner, we have 2 full-time employees, 9 part-time employees, giving us a full-time equivalence of 6. Unfortunately, we had to pause our adult volunteers. We still have our student volunteers. Overall hours accounts for about 0.3 full-time equivalents. So overall, I would say we're down from last year's discussion where we were at 7 and change. We're now down to 6.3 full-time equivalents. These numbers have been submitted to Westchester Library System for publication, and they will be published soon, but I just wanted to let you know what's happened in the 18 months since last we talked. Our current staffing model, what makes this work for us is we have a very dedicated team, I would say, dedicated team, volunteers who transition to staff, our part-time workers. Anne has been able to very masterfully move part-time people around based on demand, family needs, community program needs, etc., to make it all work. There was some discussion earlier about community volunteers, and I mean we have people in our community who donate programs to the library to help keep our costs down. I mean, you're talking to someone here, I'm a trustee now, but I've conducted adult programs for the library and will do so again in the future. So it was something that was kind of in my community service blood, and working at the library has been a wonderful opportunity for many of us to demonstrate that. We also, let me say, have something called advisory ambassadors, or just advisors, where we have a pipeline. I mentioned a pipeline into working in staff, from students and interns and volunteers to the staff level, but we also have a pipeline of advisory folks who in the community, they help work on our annual appeal and do community outreach as needed. They give us more arms and legs. Our trustee team is small. There are 7 of us. We have a equally sized group of advisory ambassadors. It's kind of a proving ground for those who want to be trustees in the future. Makes a little more of a commitment easier to transition to. As far as our concerns and opportunities about our staffing model and who we are, as I mentioned about the adult volunteers during, social distancing and just space limitations, we've had to put those on hold for the time being. Hopefully those would be able to come back. Student volunteers, keeping that commitment fresh and alive is always something that takes time and commitment. The minimum wage, we're trying to keep up with the rise in the minimum wage, obviously. And let me just say, when I talked to Anne and the trustees about the sustainability of this model going forward, we do have to look to, staff transition. A couple of our staff who've been here for a number of years might soon be transitioning. So we want to bring in just the right person to fit the need, do the work, and kind of continue with the tradition of the esprit de corps that makes us successful. Next page, just leveraging some of our community partnerships. There's a long list there. We have great community partners. We do small, medium, and large interventions with those organizations. Upper right corner, we as was mentioned by others, we try to take advantage of any grant opportunities we can. The Westchester Library System had offered more grants. Some of those grant opportunities have been quieting down recently, as you might imagine, post-pandemic. But for example, you know, Ann took advantage of a $2,000 grant to help support our digital circulation. Every little bit helps, as is coming out in these 3 library discussions. We applied for something called an E-rate grant, which is going to help supplement some of our technology needs. I'm going to talk much more about that in 1 second. And anything we can do to bring grant money in to support our programs, we will. We actually had a subcommittee of our board put together a grants dashboard, and they were looking at grant opportunities, seeing what was viable, what wasn't viable, and how easily or how difficult it might be to turn the grants into reality and bring some more money into the library, which is kind of a fun thing. We have our trustees broken up 2 per committee: building and maintenance, fundraising, etc. And it works. It works for us. You'll notice, I don't want to leave this off, lower right-hand corner, some of the smiling Bedford Village Lions. You may recognize a few of those faces, but the Lions Club, which I'm a member, by the way, nice enough to fund a special 9/11 corner of the library, where they brought in books and other digital materials for circulation all around September 11th. And the Lions came in and kind of kicked that off. And this photo demonstrates that, again, community esprit de corps. Very key, different from the other 2 libraries, very key for us. Our wonderful building is our home. We don't own that asset. It is our responsibility to maintain it. We have a lease. So we're just showing you a few factoids here. It's a very old building. There's a lot of love and passion within the walls, but the walls need to be painted, maintained. The roof needs to be restored, on and on and on. We've put a few numbers together with some of the projects on the right side of the page. Some of those projects are from a few years back, but several of them are on our current projects list, and they're going to make it to our needs list, to request that the board has asked us to provide, such as, you know, the HVAC project that we talked about. We deferred upgrading any kind of a broadcast system at the library from some years ago. We think with people coming back into the library and us wanting to do more kind of community events, that broadcast system might be, you know, back on the dashboard. And I'm going to talk finally about some of the IT needs that we have at our library, because more and more is going digital, and also just to get the library functioning and working well. But this list here, I mean, it's over, you know, it's over $330,000 of recent spend and current spend that we're looking at on that page. Before I open it up for questions or turn it over to Ann and Ted, let me just say that one of the things that's been a key part of our discussion since a year and a half ago, when we came before the board, was to kind of highlight our relationship with the Westchester Library System. And folks on this call, some may be very intimately aware of that and others not. So let me just highlight for you, if I will, that the Westchester Library System and what's called the Interlibrary Loan System, they run basically a shared services facility linking all the 38 member libraries together with technology and a delivery system. They offer training classes, etc. Since last we talked at the end of 2019, there were system-wide cyber attacks. They also moved to migrate to a new circulation system. And let me just say that some of the functionality of that shared services is continues to be in development. and is not always meeting the needs of all the 38 member libraries. There was an outside audit done in 2020, 2021. The date of it is actually March of 2020, that highlighted some of the problems, some of the shortfall in the IT support from Westchester Library System to the 38 member libraries. And when we talk about that audit, it's something that we often spend our time on as trustees. How can we deliver value to our patrons through our advisors, through our trustees, through the staff, when the infrastructure systems at the library were kind of falling short of our regular needs. It was something we were aware of. We spent a lot of time as trustees meeting with the Westchester Library System Administration, the executive director, and the presidents of the board of trustees of WLS. And when this scathing IT audit came out in 2020, it kind of validated some of our concerns about that. Let me just highlight one or two factoids from that. And that would be that of the 38 member libraries, 72% of those libraries expressed either very or somewhat dissatisfaction with the IT services coming out of WLS. Only 10% said they were satisfied, either very or somewhat satisfied. I mean, to us, that's a huge number. We are certainly among the 72% respondents. My own personal observation, having worked in consulting and at IBM, is that the leadership at WLS has not kind of been up to the task of getting their process and services able to support all 38 member libraries. Why do I bring that up as part of this discussion? Well, one of the things I brought up to Abe and Ellen and Bobby was that, you know, here we are talking to the town about funding models and needs, and some of the things on our needs might have better been provided by Westchester Library systems, but they weren't. So when you think about the state or the county of Westchester supporting WLS, and WLS is not able to adequately support the 38 libraries, here we are talking to the town about, you know, we're getting, we need to get some improved technology to service our patrons and to run better as a library. I mean, we're talking about basic things in the form of technology. So the costs are going up from WLS. The other libraries will affirm that our costs have gone up about 11% for 2022. We're looking outside at outside IT services to give us kind of a hybrid approach, better cabling, Wi-Fi. We might have to look at things like email and email hosting and other things to get our technology to where it needs to be. It's going to be a bit more expensive, but again, we can't be held back by technology in a business like library services. Lastly, before I open it up for questions, let me just say that the funding model we have here is primarily our annual appeal is our only big fundraiser. It was mentioned about association libraries. That's been talked about. It's very cost effective for us at Bedford Free Library to run the annual appeal. It's a process, not an event. It starts and runs for many, many months. We have a dedicated part-time annual appeal manager. We have invested in a small software package to help us do campaign management, as I believe the other libraries have. But it's something we take very much to heart. All the trustees are involved. All our advisors are involved. We put a personal touch on all the communications, the initial request letters, the follow-up, the thank you notes. All that is personalized, and it is our big fundraiser of the year. We kind of close the gaps, as I mentioned, with WLS grants and anything we can do, like the E-rate funding to help support some of our technology improvements, community partnerships, the Lions Club, $500 grant to fund the 9/11 literature. But basically, we're at about 25%, thereabouts, plus or minus, of the annual appeal that we contribute to our overall funding component. The town of Bedford responds with the rest. Over 650 donors. I think we're on our way to 700 donors annually, but that kind of gives us a sense. It's our only ask of the community. It works for us. Mary from Bedford Hills pointed out the differences in constituents from town to town. So it's something we've been doing, works for us, and we'll continue to do going forward. On that short list of projects and needs, were the things that are on, Marianne, our needs list, our request list of the town, in the approximate area between HVAC, IT, et cetera, of about $75,000. I know you have the budget page and people probably will have questions about that, but we hope this gives you kind of a flavor for who we are as a library, how we run, kind of leanly, nimbly, flexibly. But it's a fun place to work. It's a fun place to support. And, you know, at the end of the day, it's 1 and 1 equals 3 around here. We wonder how we do program after program with high patron satisfaction. And I'm happy to say we've seen some of the board members at some of our programs, and that's a wonderful thing. So Ann and Ted are here in the room with me. Certainly they will chime in, answer questions, but if people do have questions, feel free. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. It's great to hear that you have so many donors. I'm going to pull up the budget schedule that you sent over so that I can share that with the folks on this call.
Thank you, Marianne. Thank you. By the way, if you look at the grab and go picture down below, I think some of the folks on this call, their names might have been on those bags.
Ah. Start sharing. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Raymond, maybe if you could just walk us through the line items for the budget.
You know, Marianne, I thought you were going to ask that question. I have to tell you, introducing Ted and Ann, you know, I've asked Ted because we wanted him to come to the meeting to talk about a few of these things. He's our treasurer. He has been for a number of years. We are in a very good place because of Ted and his talent. So Ted, if you don't mind.
All right. So I'll start at the top. Ray went into our payroll a little bit, and you know, through you know, a lot of hard work and planning on Ann's part, our payroll is pretty efficient, with 6.3, as you pointed out, full-time equivalents and 2 full-time staff members. The payroll and the benefits are rather light. Our wages are about 57% of our budget. And then as we go down to the other items, our digital materials have been climbing, and they'll continue to climb as we go from a very small digital footprint to a very large digital footprint along with the rest of the world. And our digital library materials probably won't go down as quickly. I'm sorry, our non-digital library materials probably won't go down as quickly as our digital library materials will go up. So our expenses will continue to climb. In terms of programming, we've got a very robust programming schedule, and we try to keep the expenses as light as possible, but it is another costly item. So we're asking for a little bit of an increase over last year, but not substantial. The building is difficult, as Ray pointed out. It's a 200-year-old building, and maintenance is expensive. And so this year we know we're going to have increased maintenance. So we've already upped the line item, and it could be more than that. We'll just have to see how 2022 plays out. We've been very lucky, especially 2019, 2020, where we had very low maintenance costs compared to our average, but that won't go on forever. Other items to point out, a lot of these are relatively consistent, so rather easy to budget for and estimate. The non-WLS computer expenses were high last year to shore, or high this year to shore up the lack of services that WLS provided, which Ray pointed out. We don't expect them to continue to be that high, but they will be continuing expenses that we will continue to incur. And so beyond that, we get back into sort of sustainable items that are relatively consistent. So if you have any questions on any particular one, I'm happy to go into it. Let's see that Ellen has a question. You're on mute, Ellen.
Sorry, my dog keeps barking. In the building expenses, does that include some of the things like the HVAC upgrade or the improvements to the IT, some of the capital things that were mentioned?
The capital things, yes, not the IT.
Okay.
But the HVAC, the fence, and any maintenance or improvement to the building, yes.
The projection or the broadcast system?
No, that's not part of it.
Not in there, okay. Okay.
That's its own line item.
Okay, but that's on here somewhere, that's included. Or is that more of a wish list?
It's more of a wish list.
More of a wish list.
Okay, all right, good. It's a good wish list. And then your benefits, so you're not giving health benefits because this number's
That's
too low.
correct. We give retirement benefits, but not health benefits to the 2 full-time employees.
Okay, so is that something that you, in the future, obviously not this year, but is that something that you would want to consider going forward? Because the other 2 libraries do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, what has worked for us, Ellen, is the fact that we've got a flexible staff, that people like the ability to work part-time. Anne has told me, and I'll certainly let her correct me or chime in here, that flexible model has worked. Where we did put a little bit of a yellow flag out there is for a couple of the more seasoned, longer standing employees who have a lot of institutional knowledge. If they were to transition, then replacing them would take a bit of looking and a bit of effort, and would give us an immediate need. But otherwise, the flexible model seems to, as I say, we are, Marianne alluded to this, we are open, 44 hours a week, including our normal Saturday hours. So that kind of staffing model has been flexible for us.
Right, but to your question, Ellen, I think that the insurance, the medical benefits is, could very potentially be a discussion item, and that might be an increase that we have to consider, in future years.
On the road. Okay, thanks. I agree.
One thing I'd also point out, as it was said in the other presentations, we don't have the PPP that we took in our actuals because it has not been forgiven yet. So for us, it's still a loan. We're still processing the forgiveness, and we hope to convert it, as the other libraries have, into a grant, but that hasn't been confirmed yet.
And Ted, thank you so much. How much was that PP?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How much was that?
It was
How much?
59,000.
I'm sorry?
59,000.
59,000.
Yes.
Okay. I thank you for all of the details to your budget. Looks like you 2 are operating in quite efficiently and effectively on a very limited budget. You manage and you stay open. I know that I drop in there on Saturdays, and It is nice to be able to do so. And you do have some of your infrastructure projects built into the expense here with the building. So the difference is that you're looking from 2021 to 2022 is not a significant increase from 2021 to 2022. So that that says that you're actually definitely doing a lot, and you're being quite innovative with doing a lot with the same amount of money.
Marianne, let me just say something. I really appreciate the diversity of thinking we have on this board. And Ann and I are most often on the same page, but not always. And I like to use the word alignment. We try to talk about aligning on how best to spend the money, and should we, is it an immediate need or not? And as kind of a humorous anecdote, a couple years ago, it might have been a year before the pandemic, we had talked about replacing the broadcast system because it was a need. And someone said on the board, they said, well, if we let's just do it. And I said, well, not so fast. I mean, let's invest in our future, and what's the best broadcast system to have that's cost effective and going to give us the most flexibility. So we did a little bit of research. We looked around at different broadcast system opportunities used by the libraries, used by businesses. Then the pandemic struck and there was no need for it. And we said, okay, so we deferred that expense. And now Ann and I were talking, kind of getting into the post-pandemic mindset of, wouldn't it be interesting with a library such as ours or Katona or Bedford Hills, you could broadcast from a central part in the building and have smaller groups of people throughout the building seeing the same broadcast. So you're not fraught with, wow, we've got a social distancing issue here. We have people, we can only, the biggest room only accommodates 25 or 30 people. We've got a problem. You can actually spread people around, broadcast to them very efficiently that way. So that's kind of shaping our thinking, like, let's ask questions first and spend the money when it makes sense to spend the money. But now I think it's, it's time.
Thank you. Any final comments from any board member?
I just want to say, I think everyone in our town should be so excited. We have not just one, but 3 amazing libraries that we have the benefit of, and each is incredibly unique and serves a clear need and different, a little bit of different constituencies in different ways. So I think it's incredible. You're all doing an incredible job, and I feel proud that we support all 3 libraries in a robust way as a town. And we, I think when we're kind of going over, I think we range between like 72% and 83% of the operating budget is sort of requested here. But I think in any case, we need to start a process going forward, as we've talked about, to partner on how this taxpayer money is supporting the libraries, and then how it's being spent. In the past, at least from the past few years that I've seen budget hearings, there's not been a lot of discussion about how much money is going to the libraries and what the libraries truly need, and really where the libraries are headed and what they need going forward. And so the town can have a better sense of that. And just along the way, checking in and seeing what the library priorities are and how they're spending their money throughout the year would be really helpful to the town, so that we know what's coming, whether it's in the next year or further out. If there's ways that the town might be able to help with capital projects or buildings or things, that's something that we would want to know, instead of just having this line item that, kind of randomly gets increased a little bit or not a lot every year. That would make a lot more sense to have that kind of partnership. It also, when libraries talk about expanding or changing or growing, the town has to have some input there, because if the town is expected, the taxpayers are expected to pay a certain percent, we have to have a say in what's happening on the other end. So we are I don't think we're at the point where we're talking about a municipal library where all of it, is run by the town and the budgets are completely managed by the town. I don't think we're at that point, but I think a really strong partnership is important going forward. And so I hope we can start doing that. We are doing that right now and
Yeah.
moving ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just for someone who's been on the board for the most senior years, I would like to say that we have been in partnership and we will continue to be in partnership with the libraries. Michael, I did like your suggestion about the commissions, maybe a commission for the libraries or some type of advisory board for the libraries so that, these things can get sort of vetted out, in that space and recommended to the town board. We have commissions and boards and advisory committees for other things, and certainly the libraries are a huge entity in the town of Bedford. And so those are good suggestions.
Terrific. We'd just like to say thank you very much to everyone on the board for all the deep listening you've been doing around libraries. And we know it means a tremendous amount to our community. So I feel like you're doing a great job.
I'd like to thank all three libraries for their clear presentations this afternoon. It's been helpful to us as a board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the time you spent meeting with us and laying out all of the information, so we have everything that we need. All of you, thank you so much.
I also think it's a great benefit to the people who felt the need to tune in. And, I think it's a great benefit to our taxpayers as well to have some of this illuminated because it is very complex. And, hopefully people will see it as an additional funding opportunity from the personal side as well.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right, Stephanie. There are people, I will tell you, there are people who write to my office to say we want to help the libraries in whatever way we can. Just tell us how. So thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Now,
Good night.